This lecture is from chapter 8, and it is on both the concepts of de-individuation and groupthink. The quote I wanted to start out with in this lecture is, "Standing with the crowd is easy, but it takes courage to stand alone." So let's first define the first concept we'll discuss, which is de-individuation. Groups can generate a sense of excitement, of being caught up in something bigger than oneself. In group situations, people are more likely to abandon normal restraints, to forget their individual identity, to become responsive to group or crowd norms. Individuals lose their self-awareness and go along with the group. So now that we know what de-individuation is, let's ask the question, why does this happen? Group size. Being in a group can render a specific member unidentifiable. In a sense, it's possible to disappear in the group. The bigger the group, the easier it is to disappear. People's attention is focused on the situation, not on themselves, because they've almost become anonymous. And because everyone is doing it, all can attribute their behavior to the situation rather than their own individual choices. So if you're in a big group, it's as if you become anonymous. And so it's easier to focus on what the group's doing than your individual choices. Group outbursts, group shouting, chanting, clapping, or dancing serve both to hype people up and to reduce their self-consciousness. The individual's lack of self-awareness. Self-awareness is your ability to notice your feelings, your physical sensations, your reactions, your habits, your behaviors, and your thoughts. You are aware of all those different aspects of yourself as if you were another person observing you. So people who have a lack of self-awareness, as we just defined, are more likely to de-individuate and just simply become part of the group. Again, according to the text, people with a lack of self-awareness are more likely to act without thinking about their own values and more responsive to the situation. So that's an idea, a definition of de-individuation and why we might de-individuate within a group. So let's look a little bit further. Let's define the second concept of groupthink. Groupthink is a phenomenon that occurs when a group of individuals reaches a consensus without critical reasoning or critical thinking or evaluation of the consequences or alternatives. Groupthink is based on a common desire not to upset the balance of a group of people. This desire creates a dynamic within a group where creativity and individuality tend to be stifled, simply in order to avoid conflict. So let's look at why this occurs. One reason is a group is very cohesive. The more cohesive a group is, the more they're going to want to maintain unanimity, all thinking the same way. The group could be isolated from groups with different viewpoints. So they're never really going to hear an alternative viewpoint, so they all agree on what they already have. They may have a very strong and influential leader, and so they all follow what that leader says without questioning or critical thinking. Groups have the illusion of invulnerability. This is a belief that a group is invincible and can do no wrong. This belief in itself can lead to risky decision-making and a lack of consideration for potential consequences. In other words, there is power in numbers. We're invincible because we're so big and we're as a group of people. Another reason for groupthink is there's unquestioned belief in the group's morality. Group members assume the inherent morality of the group and they ignore perhaps their own ethics or morals. Collective rationalization is a phenomenon where groups, in the face of contradictory evidence or outcomes, rationalize their decisions or assumptions in order to maintain cohesion and agreement. This psychological dynamic often leads to a deterioration of critical thinking and moral judgment as members dismiss or undervalue warning signs and dissenting opinions. It's a self-protective mechanism that preserves the group's shared illusions, often at the cost of reality. So this is a group who may be faced with opposing thoughts, and yet they rationalize their way out of that and disregard, again, their own ethics and morals in favor of maintaining the cohesion of the group. A group may have a stereotyped view of the opponent. Group thinkers tend to consider their enemies too evil to negotiate with or too weak and unintelligent to defend themselves. This is an in-group versus out-group thing. We tend to underestimate our out-group and overestimate our in-group. There's simply the pressure to conform to other members of the group and self-censorship. To avoid uncomfortable disagreements, members withheld or discounted their misgivings. This is a research, I think, experiment that's mentioned in the book where they found this, that members would withhold or discount their misgivings in order to maintain that cohesion again. Illusions of unanimity lead members to believe that everyone is in agreement and feels the same way. It's often much more difficult to speak out when it seems that everyone else in the group is on the same page. So now that we've defined groupthink and discussed what happens, how do we prevent groupthink? Preventing groupthink. The leader of a group should accept the discussion of unpopular ideas and a diversity of thinking within the group. Group members should be encouraged to think critically and be willing to hear dissenting opinions. The group should not close itself off, but should be willing to consult outside experts. Allow group members to submit anonymous comments or opinions, and ensure that the members of the group are of diverse backgrounds and have diverse experiences. Just at the end here, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are also many positive aspects of groups. I know the lecture may have made it sound like it's all negative with de-individuation and groupthink, but there are positive aspects of groups. And I like this quote, "Unity is strength. When there is teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved." Thank you for listening as always, and please reach out with any questions.